Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, Open University.
Namaste students. Welcome to Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Open University video lecture series. I am Dr. Dipal Pandya, Assistant Professor in English in School of Humanities and Social Sciences. In this video lecture, we are going to talk about Introduction to Literature. So friends, what is called literature? So literature, according to R.J. Rees, literature is writing which expresses and communicates thoughts, feelings and attitude towards life. So when we want to talk about the feelings, the attitude and our thoughts related to life, we always often use literature. Now let's find out literature in detail. Literature, a body of written works. So we can say anything that is written can be called literature, whether it's a newspaper or a travel brochure or the novel that you have been reading, everything will be called literature. The name has traditionally been applied to those imaginative works of poetry and prose distinguished by the intentions of their authors and the perceived aesthetic excellence of their execution. Literature may be classified according to a variety of systems, including language, national origin, historical period, genre, and subject matter. So these are the different facts which are useful in literature. So language is included in literature, national origin also used in literature, historical background, genre and subject matters are the important parts of literature. Why do we study literature? This is the question that I am sure that you often ask yourself, because there are many practical and scientific subjects we come across like maths and biology, psychology, physics, chemistry. Then why do we have to study literature? So these are the reasons why do we have to study literature. The first one is to understand the culture, tradition, society, political scenario, history of any particular country or region. Suppose you live here in your city and you want to know certain things about certain country or the region and you are somehow not able to go there. Now what will you do? You will read the literature of that country or the region to understand the culture, tradition, society and what is the political background of that place and the history also, to get the idea of the people, their beliefs, philosophies, rituals and experiences. Every place has different experiences. The people have different beliefs. They have different philosophies, stories, rituals and mythology. If you want to know all these things, you have to study literature of that particular place. To strengthen the language skills and vocabulary. Of course, when you read a lot, your language skills will get strengthened and your vocabulary will be increased. To explore ethical complexities. And the last one is to build the critical thinking skills. Which are the different types and genres of literature? That is also very important to know. The first one and the oldest one is pictorial. So the pictures, you might find the cave paintings and the different types of painting on the walls, and that is also kind of literature because those also expresses the thoughts and the emotions of the painter. Then the second one was oral tradition. In oral tradition, one generation will pass on the story or the poem or the related incidences to the next generation. The next generation later would pass the same story and everything to the next and so on and so forth. So that would be called the oral tradition. Pictorial and oral traditions were there when the written language was not found, when the scripts and the writing skill was not found. And the third one is of course written documents. The 5 main genres of literature. The first one is fiction, then non-fiction, drama, poetry and folktale. Now friends, we have to understand that drama, poetry and folktale can also be the part of fiction. But here in this lecture, we will learn them separately. Characteristics of literature. It is a product of a creative imagination. So imagination is very important for creating literature. It communicates experiences, thoughts, ideas and information. As we have already discussed earlier, that the literature communicates experiences, thoughts, ideas and information. It is a life-changing experience. You might come across some greatest piece of literature which can change your life, which can change your thinking. It is a mirror to the contemporary society. Every time of the society in the history, there were certain incidents happened which left the impact on its literature. For example, when partition took place between India and Pakistan, the literature was written on partition, which called partition literature. The same way, every time has its own challenges and the incidents which took place, and they are generally noted down or they are documented in literature. So we call literature as the mirror of the contemporary society. It requires some craftsmanship and knowledge. Not everybody can produce great literature. It requires craftsmanship, it requires writing skills and also knowledge. It helps to strengthen the language. So when you read more, your language is going to get improved. Prose. Prose is ordinary language that follows regular grammatical conventions and does not contain a formal metrical structure. So prose is different from poetry, as poetry is divided into stanzas and it follows a kind of metrical structure, whereas prose has paragraphs which are simply written in a regular grammatical conventions. Prose can also be either fiction or non-fiction. It can be poetic. Yes, prose can be poetic, meaning that it has rhythmic structure and contains figurative language. Sermons, political speeches and modernist writings are good examples of poetic fiction. Novel. I am sure that you might be having lots of novels in your syllabus of BA English, and you might be enjoying the novel reading of novels. So novel is a long narrative divided into chapters. The events are taken from true to life stories and a span of long period of time. There are many characters involved. So the novel consists of many incidents and many characters, and these incidents are divided into chapters and they talk about the story. Now let's find out the different types of novels. It is very important to understand the different types of novels. The first one is allegorical novel. So to which kind of novel we will call an allegorical novel? An allegory is a narrative in which a character, place or event is used to deliver a broader message about real world issues and occurrences. Authors have used allegory throughout history in all forms of art to illustrate or convey complex ideas and concepts in ways that are comprehensible or striking to its viewers, readers or listeners. For example, Animal Farms written by George Orwell, and The Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. So the Animal Farms written by George Orwell is one of the most famous allegorical novel. It is actually a kind of novella. It is actually a satire about the Russian Revolution and Joseph Stalin. Second is epistolary novels. Students, if someone asks you what is called an epistolary novel, always remember the word letters. Epistolary novel is a series of letters which are used as the chapters of the novel. So one or the two characters are writing the letters in the novel, and these letters are used as the chapters of the novel. An epistolary novel is a novel written as a series of documents. The usual form is letters, although diary entry, newspaper clipping, and other documents are sometimes used. Recently, electronic documents such as recordings and radio, blogs, and emails have also come into use. For example, Alice Walker's The Color Purple. The Color Purple, written by Alice Walker, is one of the finest epistolary novel. Feminist novel. Now this is one of the most important type of novel. Feminist literature is fiction, non-fiction, drama or poetry which supports the feminist goals of defining, establishing and defending equal civil, political, economic and social rights for women. It often identifies women's role as unequal to those of men, particularly as regarding status, privilege, and power, and generally portrays the consequences to women, men, families, communities, and societies as undesirable. So the feminist novels talk about society in gender perspective. The novel has certain very strong female characters or certain female characters who are generally exploited by the family or the male partner. So they somewhere seek for the identity, they give each other support, or it shows the real condition of women in the society reflected in the novel. So feminist novels are one of the most important types of novels. The best examples can be A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf and The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. Gothic novel. So friends, when you read a novel and you come across certain horror elements, if you come across some haunted house and some witches and some kind of bleak atmosphere, always remember that it is a kind of Gothic novel. Think of Gothic literature as a mood. Most books considered Gothic share a few of the same motives, like a gaze to the past, crumbling old mansions, brushes with the supernatural, remote locations, family curses, and lingering mysteries. The best example of Gothic novels can be Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Psychological novels. These novels are a bit complicated in a way because to understand psychological knowledge, some knowledge related to the subject of psychology is required. In literature, psychological fiction is a narrative genre that emphasizes interior characterization and motivation to explore the spiritual, emotional, and mental lives of the characters. The mode of narration examines the reasons for the behaviors of the character which propel the plot and explain the story. Psychological realism is achieved with deep explorations and explanations of the mental state of the character's inner person, usually through narrative modes such as stream of consciousness and flashback. For example, To the Lighthouse, written by Virginia Woolf, can be the example of psychological novel. Picaresque novel. Now we will read the characteristics of picaresque novel to understand what is called a picaresque novel. A picaresque novel is usually written in first person as an autobiographical account. For example, if I am the protagonist of the picaresque novel, the whole novel is written in an autobiographical form. It's like I am telling my own story. I am sharing my experiences with the readers. The main character is often of low character or social class. He or she gets by with wits and rarely stoops to hold a job. There is little or no plot. The story is told in a series of loosely connected adventures or episodes. The whole novel has plenty adventures and episodes described in them. There is little if any character development in the main character. His or her circumstances may change, but these rarely result in a change of heart. The Picaro's story is told with a plainness of language or realism. Satire is sometimes a prominent element. The behavior of a picaresque hero or heroine stops with kind of criminality. Stream of conscious novels. The term stream of consciousness, also known as interior monologue, characterizes the unbroken flow of thoughts and awareness in the waking mind. It is a mode of narration that attempts to give the written equivalent of the character's thought process, which thought process either in a loose interior monologue or in connection to his or her actions. So friends, when you will read a novel which is based on stream of consciousness, you will find long sentences. So whatever thoughts are going on in the minds of the characters are described by the novelist. So you will find this line starts, the dialogue starts from the line 1 and then it ends at line 5. So these are the long sentences which are used, because when we think something in our mind, we don't use full stop, we go on and on and on. And that's why stream of consciousness novel also talks about the same thing. Mrs. Dalloway, written by Virginia Woolf, is one of the finest examples of stream of consciousness novels. Now we will move to poetry. So what is called a poetry? We will use the definition given by William Wordsworth. Poetry is the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. Elements of poetry. Elements of poetry are stanzas. So stanzas are generally used to divide the poetry. Sounds are used. Rhythms are used, figures of speech and meters are used. Now let's go for the different types of poetry. First is lyrical poetry. Lyrical poetry falls into 3 categories. The first one is elegy. We will understand this with the examples. The first one is elegy. In memory of W.B. Yeats, written by W.H. Auden, can be the example of elegy. Then ode. Percy Bysshe Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. And the third one is sonnet. Sonnet is a kind of lyrical poetry written in 14 lines. And the best example can be Death Be Not Proud by John Donne. Narrative poetry. There are 2 types of narrative poetry. First one is epic, and the examples can be Beowulf, Paradise Lost, and the Indian examples can be the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. They are called the narrative epics. Second one is ballads. Ballads were generally belong to the oral tradition, but later they were also, the poets also started writing them. John Keats' La Belle Dame Sans Merci, Thomas Hardy's During Wind and Rain, and Edgar Allan Poe's Annabel Lee are the examples of ballads. Drama. Drama is to perform on stage. So you might have come across many dramas, you might have watched many dramas live, and they include dialogues, stage settings, costume, makeup and actions. And drama can be divided majorly into 2 parts. We will understand them by the examples of Shakespeare. So Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream and As You Like It can be the examples of comedy drama. King Lear, Macbeth and Hamlet can be the examples of tragedy drama. Characteristics of drama. A drama is a piece of writing which is artistically presented with dialogues. A drama is attractive, impactful, and real as it represents characters along with a natural and credible aspects. It is very similar to a short story as it also comprises characters, plots, settings, as well as symbolism. non-fiction. As fiction is a part of literature, non-fiction is also one of the most important parts of literature, and we also need to understand it when we understand literature. First one is biography, then autobiography, periodicals, magazines, newspapers, journals published on regular basis, reference materials such as dictionary, thesaurus, encyclopedia, thesis, dissertation, and essays. Biography and autobiography. So, what is the difference between biography and autobiography? If someone asks you, you can give this example. Like, if I write my own life story, like for example, I was born here, I was born there, and then I brought up at some place, and these are the different incidents happened in my life. I faced certain unsuccessful events, and I faced certain successful events. These are the people who came in my life. So when I talk this kind of my life story, it will be called autobiography. So when I write my own story, my own life story, it will be called autobiography. Now, when someone else tells my story, for example, my friend or my colleague or someone else takes my interview or observes my life, and then he or she writes down my life story, that would be called biography. So, autobiography is a life story of yourself written by you, whereas the biography is a life story of you written by someone else. So there are three primary formats to tell a creative non-fiction story: memoir, autobiography, and biography. Each has its own distinct characteristics, so it's important to understand the differences between them to ensure you are writing within the correct scope. So it is very important to understand the difference between these two to write in a correct scope. Periodicals. A periodical is a publication that issues articles, etc. periodically throughout the year, hence the name. You may be most familiar with periodicals like magazines, newspapers, and journals. Journals are often issued monthly but might be published only a few times per year. Magazines are often published weekly or monthly, while newspaper usually go to press daily. So you get the newspaper every day. Three types of periodicals. The three types of periodicals are popular, which include newspaper and magazines of general interest. So popular periodicals generally are newspapers and magazines which consist general interest, like every person can be interested in them. Second is trade publications. Trade publications are which appeal to a smaller, more specific audience. So businessmen and business people or those who are somewhere related to marketing can be interested in trade publications. And the last one is scholarly. These scholarly periodicals are generally for researchers and scholars who are doing MPhil and PhD and other research related projects. So scholarly, which may be of limited interest to the general public, with articles written by scholars or researchers. So not everybody will be interested in research related periodicals, only the specific audience will be interested in them. Thesis and dissertation. Now friends, most of us sometimes make mistake and we think that thesis and dissertation both are same. They are the similar, but that is not true. Thesis and dissertation both are completely different from each other. Of course, they both are long essays based on research. However, there is a difference. The main difference between a thesis and a dissertation is when they are completed. The thesis is a project that marks the end of a master's program, while the dissertation occurs during doctoral study. The two are equally quite different in their purpose as well. A thesis is a compilation of research that proves you are knowledgeable about the information learned throughout your graduation program. Essay. We all have written essay in our school, and I'm sure that you might be writing essay in examination these days also. So we will understand what is called essay and what are the different types of essays now. An essay is generally a piece of writing that gives the author's own argument, but the definition is vague, overlapping with those of letter, a paper, an article, a pamphlet, and a short story. Essays have traditionally been subclassified as formal essays and informal essays. These are the four types of essays: expository essays, descriptive essays, narrative essays, and argumentative essays. And we have also added the fifth one, and that is called persuasive essay. First one is expository essay. These are probably the most common types of essays you will come across and are a common format of essay required in exam. So expository essays are the kind of essays you write in your examination. If you are writing an expository essay, you will find yourself digging into a theme or topic and then coming up with an idea. You will also be analyzing evidence and then structuring an exposition, hence the name, about the idea. Next is the descriptive essay. As the name suggests, this essay is all about the language, adjectives, similes, and metaphors. These kind of essays are about describing as vividly as possible anything you are asked to write about. An example assignment for you can be to write an essay about your most recent holiday experience. So you can write a descriptive essay when you are free on the topic called your most recent holiday experience. This would be an ideal time to use a descriptive essay. So you should use your ideal time for writing a descriptive essay. Next is narrative essay. Narrative essays also require a clear structure, introduction, body, and conclusion populated with concise language. Argumentative essay. The argumentative essay is a genre of writing that requires the students to investigate a topic, collect, generate, and evaluate evidence, establish a position on the topic in a concise manner. And the last type of essay is persuasive essay. Persuasive writing intends to convince the readers to believe in an idea or opinion and to do an action. Many writings such as criticisms, reviews, reaction papers, editorials, proposals, advertisements, and brochures use different ways of persuasion to influence readers. So we will end this lecture with what Henry James has said. It takes a great deal of history to produce a little literature. We will end this lecture now. So that's it for this video lecture. We will soon meet in the next video lecture with an exciting new topic. Namaste.